Hey guys, welcome to the video. Salt here. Today we're going to be going over the Warframe Hildryn Prime. So Hildryn Prime was suggested to us by commenter form of A7X, and that's why we're doing her today. We have the top commenter of the last video, DadShirt6681, and we have the first commenter of the last video, Boofhead711. Alright, so let's go into Hildryn here. And what I want to do first is I want to go over Hildryn's abilities, just for anyone that doesn't understand them fully. So her passive is that she has a 3.5 second full shield gate, and if we look at a blank config and we look at shields, it's still going to be 3.5 seconds. So she just gets a 3.5 second shield gate. Her 1, we're going to be subsuming Roar onto Hildryn. Her 1 is normally her exalted weapon, Balefire Charger. There's some issues with Balefire Charger though. It has very bad crit chance, it has very bad status chance, it has very bad crit multiplier. It's pretty much bad in like all stats. And so you just kind of build it out for Unga Bunga damage, which is okay, but it's going to get beat out by like a lot of other weapons. So it's an okay weapon. You can make it good by jumping through hoops and like doing a bunch of other things. Like you can add an Adarza Kavat for final critical. You can add Arcane Avenger for final critical, but you're picking a specific pet. You're picking Arcane on your Warframe just to make Balefire Charger like as good as other weapons. So it can be good, but you're jumping through a lot of hoops for it. So for that reason, we subsume it out and we're going to put Roar here instead. Roar is a multiplicative damage increase. There are 2 other really good subsumes. So Roar is amazing for damage. And then the other amazing subsume is Gloom, weirdly. Gloom is very good on Hildryn. So there's 2 parts to the Gloom. There's the lifesteal part of it, and then there is the slow part of it. The lifesteal part we don't really need for Hildryn because she's a shield frame. But the slow part of it is very powerful, especially on frames that stack ability strength, which we're going to be doing on Hildryn. But the negative part of Gloom is that it sucks a lot of energy, and so sometimes it's hard to keep on. But Hildryn uses her shields as energy for her abilities. And so you don't really have that issue with Gloom. So you get all the best parts of Gloom, but not really any of the negative parts of Gloom. So Gloom is amazing on Hildryn, but it's more of a support pick, because you're just supporting your team by basically making all the enemies like sit at a standstill. I mean, Roar is also a support pick. You're giving damage to everyone. I just feel like Gloom's a little bit more of a support than Roar is, but they're both amazing. I'm going to pick Roar. Roar's a little bit more of the selfish one, but I'm going to go with Roar. The third subsume that is really good on Hildryn. However, I feel like this is more of a training wheels kind of subsume. Like when you're just getting into Hildryn, this could help you just stay alive and learn Hildryn a little bit more, is Chroma's subsume. So Chroma's subsume it's a buff that just gives you more shields. It does some like other like little extra things as well, but it's a buff that just gives you more shields. It ends up giving you about like 2 to 2,500 more shields. We don't really need more shields. We're already at 8,000, like even without overshields. So like we don't technically need more shields, but if you're just getting into Hildryn, or maybe you didn't have like some of the bigger shield mods, Chroma Subsume could help you out a bit. So it's probably the weaker of the 3, but it's like the training, right? It's like the training wheels part of Hildryn. You could use Chroma Subsume. Okay, so yeah, we're picking Roar here. Okay, the 2 is going to be Pillage. You're going to emit a radial pulse that follows Hildryn and expands outwards. Hildryn and allies touched by the pulse are cleansed of negative status effects, and enemies in line of sight and within the pulse's range are stripped of armor and shields by an X amount. Now, something important with Pillage is that the amount to fully strip with corrosive projection is 328% strength. If you notice, we are not at 328% strength. Okay? We get to that strength value eventually, like pretty soon after the game starts, but eventually with Mult Augmented. So with about Mult Augmented stacked like halfway, will be at a full strip for the rest of the game once it's stacked about halfway. For you to get to one, it's about 120 kills to 140 kills. So for you to get to 120 to 140 kills is only a few minutes in the game. So within a few minutes, you'll be at your full strip value from then on. Coaction Drift also boosts up corrosive projection, which makes it so that you don't need to be at that full 328 strength. I don't know exactly what you would have to be at, but it's going to be less than that because Coaction Drift will just boost corrosive projection to make the enemies lose more armor. Okay, so that's Pillage. The 3 is Haven. You're going to link your shield matrix to allies and enemies. While linked, allies will get increased shield capacity, faster shield recharge, and a full 3.5 second shield gate. Enemies are going to get radiation damage per second, doubled when Hildryn has overshields, and smaller enemies can be staggered. Okay. So that is Haven. The 4, Aegis Storm. This is another weird one. So Aegis Storm and Balefire Charger, the one we actually subsumed out, they kind of combo with each other. And it's because when you're in Aegis Storm, the only weapon you can use is Balefire Charger. So you're not allowed to use your weapons except for the Exalted. You can't even cast Pillage while you're in your Aegis Storm. So it's a very just clunky ability. I wish you were able to, like, at least use one of your best abilities, which was Pillage. So it's just super weird. But when you're in Aegis Storm, you're going to kind of hover in the air. It's going to do a crowd control effect to enemies in a radius around you. They're going to poop out energy orbs every few seconds. And then when you cancel the ability, you kind of go slamming down and you do some damage. It's interesting. It's just that because we need to mix it with the underwhelming Balefire Charger, and because it doesn't really do anything except for like a weird crowd control that forces you to move slowly while hovering, we don't really use it too much. We keep it on the build, but we don't really use it. In fact, you can actually choose to subsume over the 4 as well. You can either choose the 4 or the 1 to subsume over because they're both kind of bad. I choose to subsume over the 1 because if I don't, I sometimes accidentally will press 1 and I'll go into the Balefire Charger and I won't be shooting my normal weapon. And I don't like that. So I actually subsume over my 1 so I can stop myself from doing that. But you could also subsume over the 4. It's fine. So those are the abilities. We have Other Salt out in the field. He's going to be showing off these abilities. I'm going to go ahead and switch to him now. Here we go, guys. Hey, guys. Other Salt here. We're going to be showing off Hildryn's abilities. We're going to start with her 1, which is going to be Roar. That's actually the subsumed ability we're using from Rhino. It's not really anything too crazy. It's just a multiplicative damage buff. There it is. Okay, next we're going to be using her 2. Her 2 is going to be Pillage. This is the one that's going to strip enemy shields and armor. So I'm going to press 2 here. It's going to go out, and it's going to cause some armor strip. Now, of course, as Salt explained, we're not going to have a full strip until our Mult Augmented is at about 120 to 140 kills. So probably just within a couple of minutes in the game, you should be full stripping from that point on. Okay, and then the 3 is going to be Haven. This, we're actually going to be linking our shields to allies and enemies. Allies are going to get a little buff, and enemies are going to get a little damage. So that's what's going to happen there. They also get staggered too. So as you saw that when I first casted it, let me turn it off and then turn it back on again. Looks like they didn't get staggered the second time. That could just be a simulacrum thing. I don't know. So, all right. And then finally, 4 is going to be Aegis Storm. This is going to be the one where she hovers in the air. Unfortunately, you can't use weapons in this except for Balefire, which Balefire is normally her 1. So we're not really going to be able to use any weapons in this mode. But it's going to cause dudes in the radius to be CC'd. They're also going to poop out energy orbs every X amount of seconds, depending on your stats. And they're going to take some damage. And then when I press the button again, she's going to slam to the ground, and they're going to go on the ground like that. So, all right, that was the 4 abilities for Hildryn. I also want to showcase Blazing Pillage, and kind of the reason why I don't use it. So Blazing Pillage is very popular on Hildryn builds, and that's why I just wanted to go over this and just explain why I don't use it. So to be able to fit it, I'm just going to take off 2 of my shield mods. So Prime Vigor and Prime Redirection. It shouldn't affect any kind of damage. So we're going to put on Blazing Pillage right here. So Blazing Pillage is when they're affected by Haven, which is the 3. When you do pillage, they're going to take a heat proc, and it's going to restore some extra shields to Hildryn. Okay, so we do Haven. So they take damage normally already with Haven, and then we do pillage, and now they're affected by a heat proc. It doesn't do an incredible amount of damage. So that, and you know, we're already restoring a lot of our shields anyway with pillage, so like we don't really need the shield restore. So I just feel like it's kind of a meh ability. I mean, it's interesting, and if you want to use it, there's ways you can fit it on the build. I just don't really feel like it's super important. So that's why I leave it off of my build. So that's everything. I'm going to give a wave back to Salt so he knows that we're done here. All right. Great job, Other Salt. Great job. You're looking extra sexy today as Hildryn. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go over the mods on our Hildryn Prime. So we're going to start with, well, actually, you know, before we go over this, let me explain the 3 basic survival types in Warframe. So first is health and armor. Second is shield and adaptation. And third is shield gate. This build is a shield and adaptation build. Okay. Health and armor and shield and adaptation both require damage reduction. For health and armor, you have a pool of health, and your armor is damage reduction for that pool. And with shield and adaptation, you have a pool of shield, and you have adaptation as your damage reduction for that pool. For shield gate, you just use shield gate. Yeah, every Warframe shield gates regardless, so you just shield gate and hope you don't die. And you usually can mix other things in shield gate to make it a little bit more consistent. You can use like auger mods. You can mix in rolling guard to make it a little bit more consistent. And that's how it works. Now, health and armor and shield and adaptation builds are typically a lot more comfortable and better for non-level cap. But at level cap, mechanics, a lot of the mechanics in the game just don't work at level cap. Damage reduction does not work at level cap, and so you have to play shield gate. So for that reason, this build, being a shield and adaptation build, is not a level cap build. This is going to go to about level 4 to 5,000, and then at that point, damage reduction no longer works, and you would have to use a shield gate build to go past that. Okay, but just to showcase what a shield and adaptation build can do, I have a little gameplay example here. I'm going to switch to it here. It's just going to go black for a second, and then we'll be right back. And there it is. So health and armor and shield and adaptation builds, you can pretty much leave your computer, go take a dump, come back, and your dude's still alive. You can't do that on shield gate. That's why shield gate's a little bit less comfortable to play. But it's the only thing that works at level cap. So you are forced to play shield gate if you intend to do level cap. Okay, so let's go over these mods. So we need a pool of shields for our damage reduction to work. So we're going to start with that pool of shields. We're going to start with Prime Redirection for 180% shield capacity. We're going to do Prime Vigor for plus 75% shield capacity. We also get some, extra health here too, plus 75% health. Now, Prime Vigor is unfortunately a login reward, so you could just use regular Vigor here, or there is another shield mod. You type in shield, and I'm going to pull this over so you can actually see it. This one here, Boreal's Hatred. There's plus 65% shield capacity. So if you don't have Prime Vigor, you can either use regular Vigor, or you can use the plus 65% shield capacity on Boreal's Hatred. And for the third shield mod, we're going to be using Augur Accord for plus 70 shield capacity. So these 3 mods are going to make up our pool of shields. Now, on a health and armor build, you're typically looking to be at least 2,000 health and 2,000 armor. Okay. On a shield and adaptation build, you kind of want to double that. Or even a little bit more. So you kind of want to be at 4,000 shields, maybe even 5,000 shields with your damage reduction of adaptation. The reason is because adaptation is not always 90% damage reduction. It needs to stack up to 90%. It gets to 90%, but it needs to stack up to that 90%. So before it's at the 90%, you're taking some pretty big spike damage before that. So you can't just be at 2,000 shield. It's going to be a lot more dangerous than a health and armor build that's always at their 90% damage reduction or close to 90%. So for a shield and adaptation, you want about 4,000 to 5,000 minimum. Our build gets to 8,000. And this is not with overshield. With overshield, I think we get to about like 9,000, 10,000. So our build gets to 8,000, which is, a lot. It's a lot. You can technically remove one of these shield mods and still be at a good shield value. Like, if you notice, Blazing Pillage is not on this build, and Blazing Pillage is a popular Hildryn augment. I don't use it myself, but it is a popular Hildryn augment. A lot of people love their Blazing Pillage. And if that's the case, you could pop one of these shield mods off and put Blazing Pillage in its place there. So, and you would still be at a good shield value, right? You'd still be at that over 5,000 shield value that you really want to be at. Okay. Adaptation is going to be for that damage reduction. Stacks up to 90%. Okay, we already talked about that. And so the whole bottom row we can use for stats. Okay, so you want a little bit of duration on Hildryn because a lot of her stuff needs duration. So Roar likes duration. It just makes it more comfy so you don't have to recast it all the time. And Pillage, so the range of Pillage, the initial range is based on your range, but a lot of the range it gets is actually the after effect when it starts spreading out, and that's based on duration. So you definitely want duration with Pillage. So that's why we use Prime Continuity, just to add some duration there. We're adding Stretch to give our Pillage a good amount of initial range, and also Haven to be able to hit like a decent amount of dudes. It also helps with Roar, giving it to your allies, if you want to help them. Then we use Blind Rage here. Blind Rage is going to give us a huge amount of ability strength, 99%. It's going to give us negative 55% ability efficiency, but that doesn't matter too much because Hildryn uses shields as energy, so the negative efficiency doesn't really matter. Umbral Intensify, we're going to use for ability strength, 44%. Okay. In the aura slot, we're going to be going for Corrosive Projection. Corrosive Projection is going to give us... It's going to make enemies lose 18% of their armor. And Coaction Drift is going to boost that. I don't know exactly what it ends up being. I think it ends up being like 25-ish% armor they lose, but that's what happens. Molt Augmented we're using for our ability strength. So at a stack of 120 to 140, we're going to be at the appropriate ability strength to full strip. So that's important to have Molt Augmented on your build. Arcane Barrier we're using for a 6% chance to instantly restore all shields to our Warframe. Our Warframe has 8,000 shields, so like just to be able to fully restore 8,000 shields is huge. That's why we pick it. Okay, now that's the build for the Hildryn Prime. We're going to go into some externals, but just keep in mind, before we go over the externals, we need it to be at a certain strength value to fully strip. And currently, the strength value we're at, Molt Augmented needs to be at 120 to 140 kills to fully strip. So when we go out of here and we look at externals, we're also considering that I have 3 Archon Shards for ability strength, okay? So I have 3 for ability strength. If you don't have 3 Tau Forged, use 4 regulars. The other Archon Shards, if you have space for 2, use 2 for casting speed. If you only have space for 1, if you used 4 for ability strength, then use 1 for casting speed. The reason casting speed shards are good is because you are going to be casting Pillage a lot. Pillage, it's not a very long cast, but you cast it so often that it adds up. Like the casting animations add up. And so casting speed helps a lot with that. So those are the externals there. For weapons, there's really nothing that super combos with Hildryn, but I just want to make people aware of certain Incarnins have evolutions that say with overshields. So if we look at the Paris here, the Paris is usually considered kind of like a weaker bow. It's like worse than the Dread. But its evolutions, if you're able to fulfill certain evolutions, it starts becoming really, really good. And so like Guardian's Might here increases your base damage by plus 20, but with overshields increases base damage by plus 74. That's huge. And we're always going to have overshields with Hildryn, basically. The Furus is similar. So if we look at Furus and we look at its first evolution here, base damage by plus 28, but with overshields, we get another plus 30. If I switch to the Prisma Angstrom, it has a similar thing here, where with overshields, it's another plus 50 base damage. So weapons like this are really good combos with Hildryn. Just because you get more effect out of it. I think I'm going to use the Angstrom on this. Let me just make sure I have a decent build on it. Okay. As for melee weapons, if you're going for an actual melee Hildryn, then pick the melee weapon that you actually like to play with. But if you're not going to go with a melee Hildryn and you're trying to use like either a primary or a secondary, consider some of the stuff that may combo. So I'm going to be using the Prisma Angstrom as my main damage source, which is a secondary. And if we look at the Furax Wraith has a amalgam mod called Amalgam Furax Body Count. This gives plus 45% fire rate to secondary weapons. So this is like a fire rate mod for my Prisma Angstrom that goes on my melee. So combos pretty well there. In the focus schools, so I use my focus schools a little bit lazily. I don't use a lot of the active abilities. I use mostly just the passives. And if you were just to look at the passives with Hildryn, Maturai is a very small passive damage increase, which is helpful, but it's not super helpful. Unairu is plus 200% armor, which armor doesn't affect shield, so that's not going to work for us. Vazarin is an increase to affinity range. None of her abilities scale on affinity range. I don't believe. I'm pretty sure they don't. Zenaric is plus energy over time when you pick up an energy orb. We don't need energy, and we have a channeled ability, which doesn't work on energy over time stuff anyway, so that won't work. And Naramon is slower melee combo decay. If you were going to go with a melee Hildryn, you would easily pick Naramon. Naramon's always the pick if you're going to go with a melee build. But if we're not going to go with a melee Hildryn, Maturai is really the only thing else that gives us something. But again, this is looking at passives. This is being lazy and only just using the passive abilities of all these 5. If you want to use the actives, you can pick whatever you want. There's really good abilities in all of these actives. So I'm a bit lazy. I'm going to pick the passive ability of Maturai, just giving me a little tiny extra damage increase. Okay, even though the Balefire Charger we're not using on our build, I'm still going to just show off a build for it. So now with the Balefire Charger, you have to go back in time. You have to go back and just remember when you were MR2 and you didn't really know how to do builds. You need to go full Unga Bunga mode, okay? The only mods you're putting on here are things that actually increase the total damage, all right? You're not aware of multipliers. You don't understand what critical multipliers are or anything like that. You're just full Unga Bunga. And so we're going to go Galvanized Diffusion for multi-shot, Hornet Strike for plus 220 damage, Magnum Force for 165 damage, Lethal Torrent for fire rate and multi-shot. And then in the element slots here, we're going to go with Corrosive and Heat. Just because they're good multipliers, not actually because of the proc, because we're not going to be proccing it very often with only 10%. So we're going to go with them because they're good multipliers, and Corrosive and Heat are able to use both of the primed versions. So we go with the 90 pathogen rounds because it's bigger than the 60-60. You know, obviously bigger number mean better. Primed Convulsion for 165 electric, and Primed Heat of Charge for the 165 heat. Now, in this last slot here, the best choice for you is going to be a faction mod if you're into faction mods. If you're not into faction mods, you could always just put Prime Fulmination there too for bigger blast radius, but it's up to you. I'm not willing to form this again because I'm not going to be using the Balefire Charger, but you know, you would put a faction mod here if you like it. All right, and then for pets that combo with Hildryn. I think there's one pet that combos really well, and that is the Mechanical Hound. And it's going to be for 2 reasons. So if we go to Mechanical Hound and we go to the build here, it's going to be the Link mod, and it's going to be Guardian. Those are the 2 reasons. So only companions can use the Link mods, and only Sentinels can use Guardian, or Robotic, I should say. Well, the Hound counts as a companion and a Robotic, so it could use both of them. So your Hildryn, you have a crap load of shields, and so if you link your shields to your pet by using link redirection, your pet has over 10,000 shields. Oh my goodness, he has more shields than the Hildryn does. And because the Hound is a robotic pet, you can use Guardian. So when your shields run out, this boosts your shields up by 100%. Your Hildryn running around with 8,000 shields, so your dude's just going to give you 8,000 shields once in a while when you run out. It's like those 2 things are gigantic. This is my basic support Hound build that I did a video on this already, so if you want this in more detail, you could look at the video. But the only difference I would do for Hildryn is you don't really need Mystic Bond. You don't need Mystic Bond for Hildryn. So Mystic Bond is after your companion uses abilities with cooldowns 5 times, you can cast an ability for free without expending energy. You don't expend energy on Hildryn, you expend shield. So there's probably better options for this 1 slot. So pop off Mystic Bond, put something else there, and you have a decent Hildryn setup here for your pet. Okay, so that's how you build out Hildryn. That's the pet. That's all the externals. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show this in about 10 minutes of gameplay on Steel Path Mod, and we'll show how she does and how the build works and functions.
Their rage is vehement, their focus impressive. Give them all warriors' death.
So you're going to keep your 1 up, which is your Roar. You're going to keep your 3 up, which is your Haven. And you're going to be pressing your 2 every like 5 to 10 seconds. Every 5 to 10 seconds, just tap your 2. Even, whether you need it or not, just tap it. Because later on in the game, like as you get higher and higher into Steel Path, there's a lot of like spike damage that happens that'll still spike your health like pretty decently, even with damage reduction. And so even if you don't think you need shields at that moment, you may need it like 1 second later. And so what Pillage does is it goes out and then it comes back, and that's when you get your shields. And so like sometimes it is good to preemptively cast Pillage. So just cast Pillage like every 5 to 10 seconds and then keep the other 2 up all the time. The 4, you can basically forget about it existing on your build. There's probably some niche cases to cast it for, but I'm not going to be using those niche cases. So okay, let's start here. So I'm going to cast my 1 to keep Roar up. I'm going to cast Haven to keep that up. And yeah, let's get this Angstrom working here. Now, of course, we're not going to be full stripping immediately. We have to get a decent amount of kills to full strip. And that's okay. I picked the Angstrom, but this thing has like pretty crazy recoil. Did I not put a recoil thing on it? Like recoil reduction? I was like, I don't know what I'm going to use as a weapon for the Hildryn video. Like, it's either going to be the Furus or the Angstrom. And I picked the Angstrom last minute, so I didn't like really review the build. So I can't remember if I have stabilizer or like any kind of recoil reduction. I don't really like this room. Let's move to another room. They're going to take forever to come to this room now, aren't they? I'm going to just stay in this room then. Because I'll be in that other room like by myself for like 2 minutes before they decide to come over there. Come on, Angstrom, fill your incarnate up. What's going on there? There we go. I think he's not filling. She's a very chill Warframe. It's not a Warframe that you have to like go crazy, like casting abilities every 2 seconds or anything like that. Well, except for Pillage, right? Pillage is like every 5 to 10 seconds you want to press it. But other than that, like other than like teaching yourself to just mechanically press Pillage like every 5 seconds, not too bad. Pretty chill. Pretty chill Warframe. If you want to play her as a shield gator, it's not chill, right? Shield gating builds are usually not chill. You have to kind of spam a little bit on shield gate builds. For a shield gate build, you don't need a shield pool, of course, so you can just get rid of all your survivability mods. You don't need adaptation because damage reduction doesn't work. So you for a level cap build, you basically just get rid of all of your survivability because it doesn't work. And instead, you just put Rolling Guard. You just put Rolling Guard on. You have your 3.5 second base shield gate. And that's about it. You get some extra mod slots to play around with, but other than that, that's about it. It's less comfortable to play because you're kind of running around like a crazy person and you've got to spam abilities and stuff. But other than that, that's really the change. I played Shieldgate Hildryn for a while when 60 Eyes came out. That boss from the Sanctum Anatomica. The one where, like, you have to, for the mission, you have to collect 30 eyes. But then if you keep collecting eyes after they say the mission's over, you collect 60 eyes instead. It summons the secret boss. And you do that on Steel Path. And so it's not the normal Steel Path boss. It's the boss that comes out after you do, like, the secret thing. Which is like a harder version of the Steel Path boss. And that boss hits like a friggin' train. So no amount of damage reduction can stop the one-shots from him. And also he silences you over and over, so you can't just go in there as Revenant. Well, you could, but you're going to run out of energy. Recasting Mesmer Shield every friggin' 3 seconds. So the best way to do it is just to bring a shield gate frame. So me and my buddy, we would run through clan members through 60 Eyes. He would do Styanax, because Styanax spears give everyone 0.5 second shield gates. So like we could carry 2 other people in our group and like make sure they stayed alive. And then I would be Hildryn, shield gating Hildryn, and I'd be doing the damage. Because Styanax, to keep other people alive, basically requires you to just spam that. So like he couldn't do much DPS while he was spamming it. So I would do the what am I using here? Oh, okay.
This death is temporary. My existence is forever. I cannot be destroyed.
Man, these enemies really love just sitting in this room. I can't get them to like follow me up there. So yeah, I played a lot of Shieldgate Hildryn at that time. I don't like Shieldgate Hildryn as much as I like Shield and Adaptation Hildryn. Just because it's less comfortable to play. Shield and Adaptation, you could like literally leave your computer and go take a dump and come back and your Hildryn's still alive. You can't do that on Shieldgate. But certain parts of the game, like level cap, requires you to shield gate because nothing else works. Like all mechanics stop, not all mechanics, but a lot of mechanics in the game just don't work anymore at level cap. Even damage starts not working, and so people just do dot builds for level cap because like regular damage sources stop working. It's a little bit, I don't know, I feel like they need to maybe like revisit it or something. It just feels like you're playing a different game at level cap, basically, because level cap builds suck on non-level cap, and non-level cap builds suck on level cap. So it's basically just a different game. I keep going out of Incarnate mode. That's what I'm doing. That's why I'm screwing this up. I'm just not paying attention very well this morning. Did I do it again? I think I did it again there. I had a full Incarnate bar and I went out of Incarnate. Luckily, the Prisma Angstrom has a pretty decent, like, non-Incarnate. It's just slower. Almost at 10 minutes here. If you notice, Hildryn's more of like a weapon platform type Warframe. So, you know, the gameplay video might look just like an Angstrom and Karnan showcase instead of Hildryn, but it's because Hildryn's more of like a weapons frame. She has the armor strip from Pillage, which makes everyone weaker. She has Haven, which I guess is a little bit of a supporting ability, and you know that's about it. And you mix Roar up for more damage. Almost done here. 3 seconds. All right, what are we at here? A little bit over 1,000 kills. 1,120 kills. Get out of here. Let me get through. That's Hildryn Prime. I really like her. I've been playing Hildryn for a very long time.
What you have learned here will serve you
I played her. Necros, of course. Necros was my main. I don't think I'll ever remove Necros from my most played Warframes, no matter how infrequent I play him. But like Banshee, Hildryn, Rhino, Garuda, those are like my second mains after Necros. I played the hell out of those. So that was Hildryn Prime. If you guys liked the video, consider giving it a like. If you haven't subbed yet, consider subbing or tell me what I can do to earn your sub. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. All right, bye.